Every Sunday morning for 7 years, Marcus Reed drove his 3 daughters to Riverside Cemetery. They'd stand together at Grace Reed's grave while Marcus told them stories about their mother, the woman they barely remembered. At 55, Marcus still felt the loss like it was yesterday. Grace had died when the triplets were only 3. Cancer, sudden and merciless. He'd raised Emma, Lily, and Sophie alone since then, working double shifts at the hardware store to keep them fed and housed. This particular Sunday morning was different. As they approached Grace's grave, Marcus stopped short. Fresh flowers already sat at the headstone. Not the grocery store bouquet Marcus brought every week, but an expensive arrangement. White lilies and roses, the kind that cost more than Marcus made in a day. "Dad?" Emma, now 10 years old, tugged his sleeve. Someone else left flowers. Marcus's chest tightened. Who else would visit Grace's grave? Maybe they got the wrong spot, he said, but he didn't believe it. They placed their own flowers beside the expensive arrangement and stood in silence. Marcus cried quietly, like he did every week. The girls had learned not to comment on it. It was just part of Sunday. As they turned to leave, Lily grabbed his hand. "Dad, look!" A black car was parked 3 rows over. A man in an expensive suit stood at another grave, head bowed. As Marcus watched, the man finished his visit and walked toward them. Marcus recognized him immediately. Everyone in town knew Richard Ashford, billionaire, CEO of Ashford Industries, the man whose mansion overlooked the entire valley. Richard stopped when he saw them, his expression shifting from grief to something Marcus couldn't read. "Marcus Reed?" Richard's voice was quiet, respectful. "Mr. Ashford." Marcus kept his daughters close. "Can I help you?" Richard glanced at Grace's headstone, then back at Marcus. "I've been leaving flowers here every week for 7 years. I didn't think I'd ever meet you." Marcus's mind reeled. "Why would you leave flowers at my wife's grave?" "Because she saved my life," Richard said simply, "and I never got to thank her." Sophie whispered to her sisters, "Why would Mom save him?" Richard heard her and knelt down to the girl's level. "Would you like to know what your mother did?" The triplets looked at Marcus, who nodded slowly. 7 years ago, Richard began, "I was in a very dark place. I just lost my wife and daughter in an accident. I was driving to my office, not really paying attention, thinking about ending everything. I ran a red light." Marcus's breath caught. He remembered that day. Grace had been on her way to the hospital for her treatment. "Your mother's car was in the intersection," Richard continued. "We collided. It wasn't a terrible crash, but both cars were damaged. I got out expecting to exchange insurance information. Instead, your mother looked at me and asked if I was okay. Not angry about her car, concerned about me." Richard's voice thickened. "I must have looked as broken as I felt because she asked me to sit down on the curb, made me drink water from her bottle, asked what was wrong. I told her everything, my wife, my daughter, how I couldn't see the point of continuing." "What did she say?" Emma asked softly. "She said that grief makes us do desperate things, but those feelings pass. That her own doctor had just told her she had 6 months to live, maybe less, and she'd give anything for more time. She made me promise I wouldn't waste the time I had." Marcus's eyes burned. Grace had never told him about the accident. "She'd come home that day and said nothing. She stayed with me for 2 hours," Richard said. "Missed her treatment appointment. Just sat on that curb talking me through the worst day of my life. When we finally exchanged information, she made me promise to get help, professional help, to keep living." "Did you?" Lily asked. "I did. That night I called a grief counselor, started therapy, slowly rebuilt my life. And every week since then, I've come here to thank her, to tell her what I'm doing with the life she convinced me to keep." Marcus wiped his eyes. "She never told me. She came home that day and acted like nothing happened. She probably didn't want to worry you. She knew she was sick." Richard stood. "I've followed your family from a distance over the years. I know you work at Patterson's Hardware. I know you're raising 3 daughters alone. I've wanted to help, but I didn't know how without seeming intrusive." "Why are you telling us this now?" Marcus asked. "Because you deserve to know what your wife meant to someone. That 2 hours she spent with a stranger in crisis changed everything. I'm alive because of her kindness. My company employs 4,000 people because I didn't drive off that bridge I was heading toward. Those 4,000 families have homes and food because your wife cared about a broken man on a curb. Sophie stepped forward. Do you miss your family? Every day, Richard said gently. But your mother taught me that grief and love can exist together, that missing them doesn't mean I can't also live fully. That's what Dad tells us, Emma said. About missing Mom but still being happy sometimes. Richard looked at Marcus with understanding. Your father is wise, just like your mother was. As Richard turned to leave, Marcus called out. Mr. Ashford? Wait. Richard stopped. Thank you for the flowers, for remembering her, for making her last kind act mean something. It meant everything, Richard replied, which is actually why I'm glad we finally met. I'd like to do something if you'll allow it. We don't need charity, Marcus said automatically. It's not charity, it's gratitude. Richard pulled out his phone. Your daughters are 10 years old. In 8 years they'll need college. I'd like to establish scholarships for each of them. Full tuition, wherever they want to go. In Grace's name. Marcus's throat closed. That's too much. Your wife gave me back my life. The least I can do is help ensure her daughters have every opportunity. Please, Marcus, let me honor her memory this way. Emma grabbed her father's hand. Dad, maybe we should say yes. Mom would want us to go to college. She talked about it all the time, Lily added. How important education was. Sophie looked up at Richard. Would the scholarships really say our mom's name? The Grace Reed Memorial Scholarship, Richard confirmed. So everyone who receives it will know about the woman who understood that kindness matters, even when you're facing your own struggles. Marcus couldn't speak, he just nodded. Over the following months, Richard became an unexpected presence in their lives. Not intrusive, but there. He attended the girls' school plays, showed up at Marcus's hardware store to buy supplies he probably didn't need, just to talk. Shared stories about his own children, keeping their memory alive by speaking about them. One evening, Richard invited Marcus and the girls to dinner at his mansion. The girls were nervous in the enormous dining room, but Richard ordered pizza and they ate at the kitchen counter instead, talking and laughing like old friends. Why do you live in such a big house all alone? Sophie asked with 10-year-old directness. Because I was hiding, Richard admitted. After my family died, I built walls, literal and figurative. Your mother taught me that was wrong, but it took me years to understand. Now I'm trying to figure out how to tear those walls down. You could have people over more, Emma suggested. Like us. We could visit sometimes. I'd like that very much. 6 years later, Marcus stood in the audience as Emma graduated high school at the top of her class. The scholarship offer letter from MIT sat framed in their living room, stamped with the Grace Reed Memorial Scholarship seal. Richard sat beside Marcus, applauding as loudly as any parent. Grace would be so proud, Richard said quietly. She would, Marcus agreed. Thank you for making this possible. Thank you for letting me be part of their lives. I thought I'd lost my chance at family. You and the girls showed me I was wrong. After the ceremony, all 3 girls rushed over. They'd grown up calling Richard Uncle Richard, the honorary family member who showed up for every important moment. Uncle Richard, you're coming to the graduation party, right? Lily asked. Wouldn't miss it. That evening, as families celebrated, Marcus found Richard standing alone, looking at a photo on his phone, his late wife and daughter, smiling at the camera. I showed them your girls' graduation photos, Richard said softly. Told them about Emma's scholarship, about Lily's art award, about Sophie's soccer championship. I like to think they know. That they're proud of how I honored their memory by helping your family. I think Grace knows too, Marcus said. I think she knew that day on the curb that you'd remember her, that her kindness would echo forward. It did, it still does. Richard put his phone away. Every scholarship we give, every employee we support, every kindness my company shows, it all traces back to 2 hours on a curb with a dying woman who cared more about a stranger's pain than her own. 10 years after that Sunday morning in the cemetery, Marcus stood at Grace's grave with his 3 daughters, now 20 years old. Emma was home from MIT, Lily from art school, Sophie from her athletic scholarship program. Fresh flowers already waited. Richard's weekly tribute, consistent as sunrise. He never misses a week, Emma observed. Neither do we, Marcus replied. They stood in comfortable silence until Richard appeared like he had countless Sundays before the Reed family. Richard greeted them warmly. All together again. All together, Marcus agreed. They stood around Grace's grave, a widower, 3 daughters, and a billionaire who'd been saved by kindness. An unlikely family, bound by one woman's choice to see someone's pain and stop to help. What do you think Mom would say? Sophie asked. If she could see us all here together? Marcus smiled through his tears. She'd say that love doesn't end, that the kindness we show ripples outward in ways we can't imagine, that 2 hours sitting on a curb can change the world. She'd be right, Richard said. She usually was. If this story reminded you that small acts of kindness echo across years and that the people we help carry our memory forward in beautiful ways, please like and share it. Subscribe for more stories about compassion, grief, and unexpected family. And comment about someone whose kindness changed your life. Sometimes 2 hours on a curb can save a life, build a family, and prove that love never really ends.